Spring of 1971. Pasadena Karate Institute sat unusually quiet that Tuesday afternoon. Outside, California sunlight washed across the parking lot. Inside, the dojo carried the familiar sense of polished wood, sweat, and worn training mats. 22 students lined the walls while training sessions unfolded across the floor with disciplined precision. At the center of the room stood Diana Reeves. By the age of 26, she had become one of the most respected fighters in the regional karate circuit. 11 years of relentless training had transformed natural talent into something far more dangerous: consistency. Many fighters could perform brilliantly once. Diana performed brilliantly every time. Her official competitive record stood at 43 victories without a single defeat. Judges praised her speed. Instructors admired her discipline. Students watched her train with a mixture of inspiration and intimidation. When Diana moved, there was no wasted motion. Every punch traveled along the shortest path. Every kick carried purpose. Every stance reflected thousands of hours of repetition. Her instructor, Harold Tanaka, often told visiting martial artists that Diana possessed some of the fastest hands he had ever witnessed. Not among women, among anyone. The statement rarely sparked debate. Most people who watched her train agreed immediately. That afternoon, she was working her favorite technique, the reverse punch that had become famous throughout local tournaments. Each impact against the heavy bag echoed through the room. Sharp, precise, controlled. The sound demanded attention. Then the front door opened. Nobody reacted at first. People entered dojos all the time. Prospective students, curious visitors, traveling martial artists. The newcomer seemed no different. He was smaller than Diana. Lean, quiet, unremarkable at first glance. No visible rank. No dramatic entrance. No attempt to attract attention. He simply stepped inside and observed. A few students glanced toward him before returning to their practice. Diana barely noticed him. Her focus remained on training. The visitors spoke briefly with Harold Tanaka near the equipment rack. After a short conversation, Tanaka nodded and invited him to stay. The stranger accepted and found a place along the wall. Then he sat down and watched. For nearly an hour he said almost nothing. He simply observed. Most people watching martial arts are drawn toward movement. This man seemed interested in something deeper. His eyes rarely followed punches or kicks. Instead, they appeared to study balance, timing, weight distribution, the invisible details hidden beneath technique. Nobody understood what he was seeing, least of all Diana Reeves. At that point in her life, Diana believed she understood fighting better than almost anyone she had ever met. The belief wasn't arrogance. It was evidence. 43 victories tend to create certainty. When a system works repeatedly, confidence follows naturally. And her system worked. Again and again. Against larger opponents. Against stronger opponents. Against experienced opponents. She had spent years proving herself. Years turning doubt into victories. Years silencing critics. As a result, something subtle had begun developing inside her. A feeling she could not fully explain. She had mentioned it once to Harold Tanaka. Not frustration. Not boredom. Something else. A sense that there was another level beyond the one she occupied. Sometimes during sparring, she experienced brief moments where action seemed to happen before conscious thought. Moments where her body responded perfectly without needing instructions. Those moments fascinated her. They felt important, yet she had no idea how to reach them consistently. Harold Tanaka had listened carefully when she described the feeling. Then he had smiled. "Good," he said. "That means you're getting close." Close to what? He never explained. Perhaps he couldn't. Some lessons require experience before explanation becomes possible. That Tuesday afternoon, Diana was closer than she realized. Far closer. Because the quiet stranger sitting against the wall represented the answer to a question she had been asking without words. The answer simply hadn't revealed itself yet. Eventually, Diana finished a training sequence and looked across the room. The visitor was watching her. Not critically, not competitively, just attentively. Their eyes met briefly. The man offered a small nod. Nothing more. Diana walked toward Harold Tanaka. "Who's the visitor?" she asked. Tanaka glanced across the dojo. "Martial artist." "What style?" He didn't say. That answer surprised her. Most practitioners loved discussing styles. Karate, judo, kung fu, taekwondo. Everyone identified with something. This man had not. Diana studied him again. He looked calm, comfortable, ordinary, certainly not intimidating. And that simple observation would become the most important mistake of her martial arts career. Diana Reeves had spent years learning how to read opponents. She could identify hesitation in a fighter's shoulders. She could detect uncertainty in footwork. She could recognize overconfidence in the way someone entered a stance. Experience had taught her that every opponent revealed something. Everyone carried clues. Everyone telegraphed information. Yet the man standing across the room seemed different. The more she observed him, the less she understood. His posture revealed nothing. His expression revealed nothing. Even his breathing seemed unusually calm. For a brief moment, Diana felt something unfamiliar. Curiosity. Not concern. Certainly not fear. Just curiosity. She walked across the dojo floor. The stranger remained relaxed. As she approached, several students gradually shifted their attention toward the interaction. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. Something about the moment naturally attracted attention. "We have some open training time available," Diana said. The man nodded politely. "I'd be happy to participate." His voice carried a calm confidence. Not the confidence of someone trying to impress others. The confidence of someone who had nothing to prove. Diana noticed the difference immediately. Most martial artists either exaggerated humility or exaggerated confidence. This man did neither. "What style do you practice?" she asked. A slight smile appeared. "A little of everything." The answer felt strangely incomplete. Diana had spent enough time around fighters to know that nobody reached a high level through a little of everything. Every accomplished practitioner had roots. A foundation. A system. Still, she let the answer pass. She explained the dojo rules. Controlled contact. No full force strikes. Technical exchange only. The stranger agreed immediately. Then Diana handed him a spare practice belt. He accepted it politely, looked at it for a moment, and placed it aside. A few students exchanged curious glances. Diana noticed. So did Harold Tanaka. Nobody commented. The atmosphere inside the dojo had begun changing. Not dramatically, subtly, like the pressure in the air before a storm arrives. The students along the walls stopped talking. One by one, their attention drifted toward the center of the room. Soon nearly everyone was watching. The stranger stepped onto the mat. His movements were quiet, economical. Nothing appeared forced. Nothing appeared prepared. Diana moved opposite him. The height difference became obvious. She stood taller, broader, physically stronger. From a traditional karate perspective, she appeared to possess every visible advantage. Around them, the dojo grew silent. Harold Tanaka folded his arms. He had watched thousands of sparring exchanges. Something about this one interested him. Perhaps it was instinct. Perhaps experience. Perhaps both. Diana bowed. The stranger bowed. Then they took position. Immediately, Diana noticed something unusual. The man wasn't standing in any guard she recognized. No formal karate stance. No recognizable kung fu posture. No boxing guard. No wrestling setup. Nothing. It almost looked careless. His hands remained low. His shoulders relaxed. His weight balanced naturally. For an inexperienced observer, he might have appeared vulnerable. For Diana, the sight reinforced her earlier conclusion. Whatever this man knew, it wasn't likely to threaten her. At least that was what she believed. Several students shared the same assumption. After all, martial artists display training through posture. That was what everyone had been taught. A proper stance demonstrated discipline. A proper guard demonstrated readiness. A proper structure demonstrated skill. This man seemed to display none of them. Only Harold Tanaka continued watching without judgment. Because he had already noticed something. The stranger wasn't relaxed because he lacked discipline. He was relaxed because he required none. There was no unnecessary tension anywhere in his body. Not in his shoulders. Not in his hips. Not in his feet. He stood exactly as he needed to stand. No more. No less. Across from him, Diana prepared to begin. Years of training activated automatically. Distance, timing, angles, control, everything aligned. The room disappeared. The spectators disappeared. The noise disappeared. Only the opponent remained. She intended to test him first. Nothing reckless. Nothing complicated. Just enough pressure to evaluate his reactions. A simple entry. A simple attack. The type of movement she had executed thousands of times. The type of movement that had helped build 43 victories. Around the dojo walls, 22 students waited. Nobody knew they were about to witness something unforgettable. The younger students expected Diana to dominate. The senior students expected an interesting exchange. Harold Tanaka expected something else entirely. He couldn't define it yet. But instinct told him to pay close attention. The stranger remained motionless. Watching. Waiting. Almost as if he already knew exactly what Diana was going to do. Seconds passed. Neither fighter moved. The tension continued building. One student later described the silence as heavier than any tournament he had ever attended. Not because people were nervous. Because everyone felt that something important was about to happen. Diana finally shifted her weight. The signal was tiny. Almost invisible. Yet the stranger's eyes seemed to notice instantly. His attention never drifted toward her hands, never drifted toward her feet. Instead, his gaze remained fixed near the center of her body, near the hips, near the source of movement itself, a detail nobody else recognized. Not yet. Diana inhaled slowly. Her muscles prepared. Her timing settled. The first attack was coming. And within moments, everything she believed about fighting would begin to change. Not because she lacked skill. Not because she lacked courage. Not because she lacked discipline. But because she was about to encounter a perspective she had never experienced before. The perspective that exists beyond technique, beyond speed, beyond power. The perspective hidden behind all of them. The room held its breath, and the first movement began. The first movement belonged to Diana Reeves. Not because she was impatient, not because she underestimated the man standing across from her, but because throughout her entire competitive career, initiative had always been one of her greatest weapons. She believed in pressure. She believed in forcing decisions. She believed that the fighter who controlled the exchange controlled the outcome. And for 43 consecutive victories, she had been right. Her lead foot slid forward. A fraction of a second later, the rest of her body followed. Everything happened smoothly. Economically, professionally. The opening attack was not designed to finish anything. It was designed to gather information. A fast front kick aimed toward the centerline. A clean entry. A familiar opening. The kind of technique that forced reactions. The kind that revealed habits. The kind that exposed weaknesses. The kick launched. Perfectly balanced. Perfectly timed. Perfectly controlled. And then something unexpected happened. Nothing. The kick touched nothing. The stranger had moved. Not backward. Not dramatically. Not in a way that attracted attention. He simply wasn't there anymore. The movement looked almost insignificant. Yet somehow the kick passed through empty space. Several students blinked. At first they assumed Diana had misjudged distance. That happened occasionally. Even skilled fighters made small errors. But Diana knew immediately that something else had happened. Her foot landed. Her mind adjusted. Her body continued flowing into the next attack. Years of training took over. There was no hesitation. No pause. No confusion. The reverse punch came instantly. The technique that had earned respect throughout Southern California. The technique judges talked about. The technique students tried to imitate. Her hips rotated. Her shoulder aligned. Her fist accelerated forward. Everything connected perfectly. The punch should have landed. It didn't. Again. Nothing. No contact. No resistance. No impact. The stranger had vanished from the line of attack before the strike arrived. Not far. Only a few inches. Yet those few inches might as well have been miles. For the first time that afternoon, uncertainty appeared inside Diana's mind. Tiny. Almost invisible. But real. Where is he? The question flashed through her thoughts. She pivoted immediately. Years of experience demanded adaptation. A skilled fighter never froze. A skilled fighter adjusted. Diana adjusted. Fast. Yet as she turned, she experienced another surprise. The stranger had already adjusted too. Not after her movement. Before it finished. as if he had anticipated the pivot itself, as if he had seen it before it happened. The realization unsettled her. Not enough to stop her, not enough to affect performance, but enough to raise questions. Questions she had never needed to ask before. She attacked again. A quick jab, then another. Both technically sound, both fast, both completely ineffective. Nothing landed, nothing connected. The stranger remained frustratingly close and impossibly distant at the same time. The students along the wall had stopped breathing normally. The dojo felt different now. Everyone sensed it. Something unusual was happening. Even those who couldn't explain it understood that much. Harold Tanaka slowly unfolded his arms. That single movement drew attention from several senior students. They knew him well. They knew he rarely reacted during sparring. If Tanaka was paying closer attention, something important was occurring. Back on the mat, Diana stepped away briefly. Not retreating, resetting, analyzing, searching. Every fighter followed patterns. Every fighter revealed preferences. Every fighter created habits. She had built entire careers around finding those habits. Yet this man offered nothing. No predictable rhythm. No visible commitment. No readable structure. It felt as though she were trying to solve a puzzle that changed shape every time she touched it. For the first time in years, she found herself unable to create a map of her opponent. And that bothered her, more than she wanted to admit. She moved forward again, this time with greater commitment. A feint low, an attack high, a combination that had broken countless defenses. The sequence exploded forward. Vast, sharp, precise. The stranger didn't react to the feint. That alone shocked her. Most fighters reacted instinctively. Most fighters saw the hands. Most fighters saw the attack. This man appeared to see something else. Something deeper. The high strike followed immediately. And suddenly, he was inside her range. Not outside. Inside. Closer than he should have been. Closer than seemed possible. For a brief instant, Diana felt contact. A light touch. Barely pressure at all. His forearm brushed hers. Nothing more. Yet something extraordinary happened. She couldn't continue the strike. She couldn't generate power. She couldn't find leverage. The technique simply stopped functioning. Not because it was blocked. Not because it was grabbed. Because the structure supporting it no longer existed. The sensation was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Every answer she had learned during 11 years of training suddenly felt incomplete. She disengaged immediately. Instinct demanded distance. Distance provided clarity. Or at least it usually did. This time clarity never arrived. Across from her, the stranger stood exactly as before. Breathing unchanged. Posture unchanged. Expression unchanged. As if the previous seconds had required no effort whatsoever. Diana's breathing was different. Not exhausted. Alert. Her nervous system had entered unfamiliar territory. And it knew it. The room remained silent. No whispers. No comments. No movement. 22 students watched history unfolding without realizing it. Diana made a decision. No more testing. No more gathering information. No more probing attacks. If she wanted answers, she would force them. Shotokan karate was built upon commitment. Absolute commitment. The willingness to place everything behind a single decisive action. So that is exactly what she did. She stepped forward. Hard. Vast. Certain. The reverse punch exploded from her centerline. Everything she had trained. Everything she trusted. Everything she believed. Poured into one movement. For a split second, it looked unstoppable. The kind of technique that had earned 43 victories. The kind of technique capable of overwhelming nearly anyone. Then came the moment nobody in that dojo ever forgot. The punch never reached its destination. A single finger touched the back of Diana's hand. Not the front. Not the striking surface. The back. A tiny point of contact. Gentle. Almost absurdly gentle. And yet the effect was immediate. Her momentum changed direction. Her balance disappeared. The force she had generated no longer belonged to her. It carried her offline. One involuntary step backward followed. Then another adjustment. Not a fall. Not a collapse. Just enough movement to reveal the truth. The exchange was over. The dojo became perfectly silent. Not ordinary silence. The kind of silence that appears when reality changes faster than understanding. 22 students stared. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Nobody knew exactly what they had witnessed. But everyone knew they had witnessed something. Diana stood frozen, trying to process it, trying to understand it, trying to find a category large enough to contain what had just happened. Across from her, the stranger remained calm. No celebration, no smile, no superiority, only attention. The same attention he had carried since entering the dojo. Several seconds passed. They felt much longer. Finally, Diana inhaled. Slowly, deeply. Then she bowed. The stranger returned the bow. And for the first time since the exchange began, Diana asked the only question that mattered. What was that? The man studied her for a moment, then nodded, almost as if he had been waiting for the question. Would you like to know? Yes. The answer came immediately. Without hesitation. Without pride. Without excuses. Just honesty. At that exact moment, near the back wall, one of the younger students suddenly leaned forward. His eyes widened. A realization had finally arrived. A realization that explained everything. And nothing. His voice barely rose above a whisper. Yet everyone heard it. Sensei. Harold Tanaka looked toward him. The student swallowed. Then spoke the name that instantly changed the atmosphere of the room forever. Is that Bruce Lee? Time seemed to stop. Every head turned. Every eye shifted. Diana looked from the student back toward the stranger standing before her. The man met her gaze, calm as ever. Then he spoke. My name is Bruce Lee. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Because suddenly, the impossible exchange of the last 13 seconds made perfect sense. And at the same time, it became even more unbelievable. For a few moments after hearing the name, nobody in the dojo moved. Bruce Lee. The name carried weight even in 1971. Not because of movie fame. Not yet. But because stories traveled quickly through martial arts circles. Stories about speed. Stories about timing. Stories about demonstrations that sounded impossible until witnessed firsthand. Most people had heard the name. Very few had stood across from the man himself. Diana remained seated on the mat. Her breathing had finally settled. Yet her thoughts were moving faster than ever. Bruce Lee sat across from her. Calm, relaxed, almost casual, as if the previous 13 seconds had been entirely unremarkable. The students gradually moved closer. Nobody wanted to miss a single word. What happened next would leave a deeper impact than the sparring itself. Because techniques fade, memories fade, but understanding can remain for decades. Bruce Lee looked directly at Diana. You have excellent technique. The statement surprised her, not because she disagreed, but because it sounded sincere. There was no politeness in it, no attempt to soften what had happened, just an honest observation. Your timing is excellent, he continued. Your speed is excellent. Diana listened carefully. Then why couldn't I touch you? Bruce smiled slightly. Because technique wasn't the problem. The answer confused her. She waited. Bruce picked up a small training pad resting nearby. He held it in one hand. When you attack, where do you think your opponent is looking? My hands. Exactly. Bruce set the pad down. And that's why most people fail. The room grew even quieter. When people fight, they watch movement. He pointed toward Diana's fists. They watch the hands. Then he pointed toward her hips. They should watch this. Several students leaned forward. Bruce continued. Your hands tell people what you've decided to do. He tapped the center of his own body. But your center tells people what you're about to do. The distinction seemed small. Yet everyone listening could feel its importance. Bruce stood, then motioned for Diana to stand as well. She obeyed. He asked her to throw a slow punch. She did. Bruce stopped the movement halfway. Again. She repeated it. Again he stopped her. This time he pointed toward her hips. The punch begins here. Then he pointed toward her shoulders. Not here. He pointed toward the fist. And definitely not here. The students exchanged glances. For many of them, years of training suddenly appeared incomplete. Bruce wasn't teaching a new technique. He was teaching a new way of seeing. The realization spread through the room. Technique is visible. Intention is hidden. And intention always moves first. For nearly 2 hours, Bruce Lee demonstrated variations of the same principle. He worked with beginners. He worked with advanced students. He worked with Diana repeatedly. Each demonstration revealed another layer, another detail, another insight. The students began noticing things they had never noticed before. Weight shifts, balance changes, tiny adjustments occurring fractions of a second before visible movement. What once seemed invisible suddenly appeared obvious. Harold Tanaka watched everything. At one point, a senior student quietly approached him. Sensei. Tanaka nodded. What he's explaining. The student struggled to find the words. I've never heard it taught this way. Tanaka smiled. Neither have I. The student looked surprised. But you already know all of this. Tanaka shook his head. No. The answer stunned him. I know parts of it. His eyes followed Bruce across the dojo floor. He understands the connections. Hours passed almost unnoticed. Eventually, the afternoon sunlight began fading through the dojo windows. The lesson was ending. Bruce Lee gathered his bag. The students instinctively stood. Not because protocol required it, because respect demanded it. He shook hands with several students, exchanged brief words with Harold Tanaka, then stopped in front of Diana Reeves. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Bruce broke the silence. "Don't misunderstand today." Diana looked up. Bruce continued. "Your victories were real." The statement mattered more than she expected. "Your training is real." Another pause. "Your skill is real." Then his expression became thoughtful. "But skill can become a wall." The words landed harder than any strike, because Diana knew exactly what he meant. For years, she had been climbing, winning, improving, advancing, without realizing that certainty itself had become an obstacle. The better she became, the easier it became to believe she already understood. Bruce seemed to recognize the realization in her eyes. What happened today wasn't a defeat. Diana listened. It was an invitation. The sentence stayed with her. For years, perhaps forever. An invitation to what? She asked. Bruce adjusted the strap on his bag, then answered. To ask a better question. The dojo remained silent. Everyone wanted to hear the answer. Most martial artists ask how to become faster, how to become stronger, how to hit harder. Those are good questions, necessary questions, but they are not the final questions. Bruce looked directly at Diana. The better question is this. He paused. What does the other person already know before they move? Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. Everyone felt the weight of the idea. Bruce nodded politely, then turned toward the exit. A few steps later, he stopped, half turned back, and offered one final observation. Your reverse punch is excellent. Diana smiled slightly. The compliment felt different now, more meaningful. Then Bruce pointed briefly toward her hips. Keep studying there. And with that, he walked out. The door closed behind him. The room remained silent for a very long time. Years later, Diana Reeves would still remember that silence. Not because Bruce Lee had demonstrated extraordinary skill, but because of what happened afterward. The exchange had changed the way she trained, the way she sparred, the way she thought, the way she observed people. She continued competing, continued winning, continued teaching. Yet everything felt different. Her attention had shifted. Instead of chasing speed alone, she began studying intention. Instead of reacting to visible movement, she began searching for invisible movement. And gradually, something remarkable happened. The feeling she had struggled to describe before, that Tuesday afternoon, finally became clear. The door she had sensed for months was real. And now she had found the handle. Years later, while teaching younger students, she often repeated a lesson she never forgot. Don't watch the hands. Students always looked confused. She would smile, then point toward their center. Watch where the decision begins. Most didn't understand immediately. Neither had she. Understanding required experience, time, failure, growth, exactly as it always had. 3 years after meeting Bruce Lee, Diana spoke at a regional martial arts seminar. During the opening presentation, someone asked a simple question. What was the most important day of your martial arts career? The audience expected a story about championships, trophies, victories. Instead, Diana answered differently. The most important day was the day I discovered I was wrong. The audience laughed softly. She didn't. I had 43 wins. The room became quiet. I thought I understood fighting. Another pause. Then someone showed me there was still another level. She looked around the room. The lesson wasn't that I wasn't good. Her voice remained steady. The lesson was that being good doesn't mean you're finished learning. Years later, many students remembered those words. Not because they were dramatic, because they were true. And perhaps that is the real lesson hidden inside the story. Not that Bruce Lee was extraordinary. Most people already know that. Not that Diana Reeves was talented. That was obvious too. The deeper lesson is something else. The moment growth begins is often the moment certainty ends. The strongest wall in any discipline is not weakness. It is the belief that there is nothing left to discover. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon in Pasadena, California, one undefeated fighter encountered a door she never knew existed. And because she chose curiosity instead of pride, she walked through it. That decision changed everything. Not in 13 seconds. The 13 seconds only opened the door. The real transformation happened afterward. And that is why people still remember stories like this. Not because someone won, not because someone lost, but because a single moment of understanding continued moving through time long after everyone left the room. The trophies stayed where they were. The records remained unchanged. But the lesson traveled onward. From teacher to student. From student to teacher. Year after year. Generation after generation. A reminder that mastery is not the destination. Mastery is the willingness to discover that there is still another horizon beyond the one you can currently see. And somewhere hidden inside every discipline, every career, every challenge, and every life, there is always another horizon.